Welcome back to Lit Up with Lo. This show is all about becoming the best versions of ourselves, and this episode really exemplifies that. Not only will we learn so much about gut health, but we'll also learn about career pivots. And I want to touch on that before I introduce the guest, because I think if you're listening to this episode, you're probably here to learn about the gut, but it's also important to realize that the CEO and co-founder who I'm speaking with today was in a completely different career path before she founded her company. She was working as a lawyer for many years, first as a trial lawyer, then as an in-house counsel for 15 years. Her husband worked in pharmaceuticals. And these are both fine career paths. I'm sure they would have been very happy remaining on those paths. They had children, they were stable. But through deep thinking and reading and talking to each other, they both realized they were not fulfilling their life's work. And I think that's so impactful. I think it's so important for us to realize you can have a career and you can also have your life's work, and they can be different, but they can also be combined. I think so often we're told you've been doing this career for X many years, so it's too late to change. And that's just not the case. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring this guest on the show. Not only is she an expert in gut health, but I also thought her story about transitioning career paths was extremely interesting and could be helpful for many of you listening. If you've been listening for a while, you know how much I value deep thinking, journaling, spending time alone with your thoughts. And one of the things that I frequently journal about is what is my life's work, and making sure that I am taking steps every day to figure out what that is and to move further along that path. So if you're not fulfilling your life's work, I really challenge you to listen to this episode and think where you can make pivots in your life. And if you don't know, then maybe it's time to start doing more deep thinking and journaling and really focusing on whether you're happy and whether you're fulfilling your life's work, as Tina says. She recommends some great books, some great authors that can also help you on that path. This episode is really full circle for me because I just started listening to podcasts about 2 years ago and immediately was hooked, obsessed, and listening to them all the time. Did not know I would have a podcast one day, but here we are. And one of the first episodes I listened to was on the Food Heals podcast, an episode with Tina Anderson, who was a gut health expert and the CEO co-founder of Just Thrive. I was immediately struck by everything she said. I became obsessed with gut health. I ordered her probiotic. It was probably my first collaboration I ever did on my Instagram where I had a discount code, and I just immediately had a great partnership with them. I made a lot of changes to my diet and lifestyle, and it eventually led to me getting my health coach certification and starting my Master's of Public Health. So almost 2 years later, to have Tina on my podcast is just amazing because 2 years ago, I can remember riding in a cab, listening to this episode like it was yesterday and having so many questions for her. So to be able to have her on was just a dream come true, especially since she's been on The Skinny Confidential, Bulletproof Radio twice, The Lifestylist, Wellness Mama, so many massive podcasts. So to have her on my show just made me feel so awesome and like what I'm doing really matters. She is so brilliant, and it was such an honor to speak with her. First of all, she's a lawyer as well, and as I mentioned earlier, she pivoted in her career when she realized she wasn't doing her life's work. She became obsessed with gut health and is so well researched that I would consider her an expert on gut health now. In this episode, you'll learn why the probiotic she sells is the probiotic you need to be taking, because it is the only product on the market that actually makes it 100% to your gut. So you buy a probiotic, and for reasons you'll learn about in this episode, not all of the strains are making it to your gut. Only about 5% of them are. 100% of her product is making it to your gut. And when I learned that 2 years ago, I became obsessed with Just Thrive and realized it was the only probiotic I needed to take. And I've been taking it for 2 years. Everything about Just Thrive is backed by research. They're constantly producing new studies and have even found that their probiotic is shown to help with leaky gut. So we'll learn all about gut health in this episode, really everything you need to know, including diet and mindfulness tips, because stress is also a huge cause of gut problems. I also think this episode with Tina is set apart from her other interviews because you really get to know her. It's not just about gut health and the probiotic, but I felt like I really got to know her as a person and her ability to connect with people and her love for deep thinking and mindfulness. And because I know when this episode is complete, you're going to want to Rush to your computer and buy Just Thrive Probiotic. I have a code for you. It's for 15% off your order. It is lit up with low for 15% off, and you just go to www.justthrivehealth.com. As always, I will have all of this information in the show notes. Lit up with low for 15% off. You're going to be obsessed with this probiotic. Tell me when you order it because I can't wait to just obsess over it with you. All right, guys, make sure you have a pen and paper. You're going to want to take notes. Here is Tina.
I actually started out in law. I was in civil litigation and I was doing insurance defense type of work, and it was great, but I was working crazy hours, and I started having children, and it just wasn't the work-life balance that I wanted. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to transition into a family pharmaceutical company where I was able to be in-house counsel and do an in-house corporate role. And it was great because I always have loved health and wellness and like bringing health to people. And I'm thinking, wow, this is great. I'm going to be able to deliver life-saving medications or be a part of it, even though I was doing legal work. And so then after being in the industry for a number of years, my husband also was in the industry. We realized that just this wasn't really our life's work. We saw a lot of the abuses in the pharmaceutical industry. We saw a lot of the overprescribing of medications. There is certainly a place for pharmaceuticals and conventional type medicine, especially for acute type of situations or emergency medical type of situations. But we just felt that there was not enough of an emphasis on prevention or maintenance of health. The emphasis was always on treatment. And so we looked into a whole bunch of different ideas and how we were going to change career paths. We're very deep thinkers. We read a lot of Norman Vincent Peale and Wayne Dyer, and we're like, we are not doing our life's work. And so we pivoted and we were able to license these exclusive probiotic strains from London University. And that's where Just Thrive was born. So it's been quite a journey.
Absolutely. Well, the first time I ever heard of Just Thrive was a couple years ago when you were on the Food Heals podcast. And I listened to your story about these probiotic strains, which I really want to get into. And I couldn't believe that these already weren't in other probiotics. I was really blown away by the fact that they stay alive and are able to actually get to your gut. Something so simple I couldn't believe was not happening already.
I know. Isn't that the truth? I couldn't agree with you more. It was shocking to us too.
So you're just doing research and you came across this?
It was one of my husband's colleagues who had been in this space, also the natural health and wellness space. He was more of a naturopath, and he said, he was formulating some of his own products. And he said, listen, we have the opportunity to purchase the exclusive rights to these strains from London University. And so they were, we pretty much took our life savings and just went forward with it. I mean, it's actually kind of funny. We went to Italy that summer. We had an opportunity to go to Italy that summer with some good friends of ours, and my kids and my husband and I were all on the island of Capri. And we said before we went to Italy, we said when we came back, we were going to decide whether we were going to take this leap of faith and go into it. And while we were there, we ran into Dr. Oz, and I'm like, oh my God, if that is
wow.
So we actually had a picture with Dr. Oz, and it was pretty cute. And I told him what we were doing, and he's like, oh, that's great. Gut health is so critically important, and we're just scratching the surface. So it was definitely a sign. So then we came back. We said, yes, let's do it. And so we purchased the rights to these strains from London University, and it's literally been the best thing I've ever done. I mean, as far as a career, I always tell my kids who are adults now, just follow your passion, do what, it's not like, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like, what do I want to do first? I mean, I've had so many different career paths, and I feel very satisfied in all of them, but you have a long life to live. You could do a lot of different things. So I really would encourage everybody to follow their passion and do what they love to do.
I love that. That's amazing. I mean, because you really did have a full career, as a lawyer. I mean, was there ever a moment where you were thinking, yeah, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore?
Well, I didn't want to work the crazy hours. I mean, I worked crazy hours. Mm-hmm. It was every weekend, every night. It was just too much. So I didn't want to do that. And then I went into litigation, and well, I love that because I love I enjoyed like doing motion practice and going to court and all that. But my passion was business. I always thought eventually I would go into corporate law, and I did to a certain extent, but I just really love business. I always have, and so I think I always wanted to transition into the corporate world with medical background.
Did you ever think you would start your own company?
No, that never. Not when I was younger anyway. I always loved business, but I didn't think about starting my own company, which is crazy because my parents are entrepreneurs and have done really well in that field. But I didn't, it seemed so overwhelming, it seems so daunting to get into it, but it's so worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. No, that's amazing. What skills as a lawyer do you think helped you start this and are helping you now?
Yeah, I think, definitely research. I am not a scientist and didn't have a huge scientific background at all, but I knew how to research. I knew how to find answers. I think also just like relationship building, which is so funny because I think that's a skill when you're an attorney. Also, just trying to negotiate settlements. I was very good at negotiating settlements. That was and so I just think I'm a people person, and I love to be around people, and I love to. I was able to negotiate things, and I'm all about like, if we all have to win in a situation, in business, in a lawsuit, like everybody kind of has to give up a little, but we all have to win in the end to some extent. And so, but I definitely think the research was super helpful too.
Mm-hmm. So when you decided to go down this preventative route, how did you and your husband land on gut health?
Yeah. Well, just from our research and from our talking with the naturopath that we had a business relationship with, we were like, and he was explaining to us, we were surrounding ourselves with some of the experts in the area, particularly a research microbiologist, and we were literally surrounded by all this research. And they had introduced us the Human Microbiome Project that was launched by the National Institutes of Health that told us more about the gut than we ever knew before. And that was a huge turning point to see like how we are 10 times more bacteria than we are human cells. That's a really hard concept for people to understand. I know it was a hard concept for me to understand, and just seeing how the health of our gut is really dictated. It really dictates every aspect of our overall health. And I don't think people realize that. I think people start to realize that, I have some gas or bloating, I may have some gut issues, or I have constipation or diarrhea, and I may have some gut issues. But people don't realize that, yes, for sure, those are certainly signs of a dysbiotic or an imbalanced gut. But, things like skin rashes or acne or, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, especially allergies, all of those things, even mood disorders, mental health issues, those are all signs of an imbalance in our gut. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other therapies for those, types of conditions, but our gut really needs to be balanced in order to, have full body health. And so it was just, we dove into all that research and understanding how the gut really plays such a huge part in our overall health. And it's so exciting to us to think that we could bring something so remarkable to the world. And it really has been. I mean, this past year, especially, to know that we are playing a role in just helping people support their gut health, which is, 80% of our immune system is found in our gut. So.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I completely agree. I had the same aha moment about gut health, probably when I heard you on the podcast, and I changed my whole life. And I knock on wood, I haven't been sick in maybe a year and a half, but I take extremely good care of my gut, and it's important.
It is. It's ground zero for health. And I think that's one thing that people really have to like wrap their head around. Like, people will say, well, I eat really clean, or I eat a lot of nutrients. And there are certainly, you could maybe stop taking certain nutrients, certain vitamins because you're eating clean. But the bottom line is that if your gut is inflamed, it's not absorbing all those nutrients from the clean food that you're eating. If your gut is inflamed, it's not absorbing the nutrients from supplements that you're taking. So when you're, starting this journey of natural health and wellness, the first thing to focus on is your gut. I mean, that is number one, ground zero. I cannot emphasize that enough. I mean, we have a lot of great products. But I mean, I always tell everyone the first thing you do is you start with the gut and, with a probiotic.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I mean, when you mentioned rashes, my cousin had this terrible rash for like about a year. And every time she would go to the skin doctor, I kept saying, you need to like take a probiotic, you need to do something with your gut. And the dermatologist isn't going to tell you that.
No, they are definitely, and that is really what has driven us so much too, is just the fact that you don't get this type of information from conventional doctors. And it's not that they're ill-willed or, not intent, they don't have good intentions. It's just, this is what they're taught. I mean, we know medical schools are funded by big pharma. And so that's a little disheartening. Again, there is a place for pharmaceuticals, and I never dispute that, but I do think that people should, be empower themselves to, and if they're sitting there listening to your podcast, they have already taken steps to empower themselves about natural health and wellness. And so good for anyone that's listening, because I think that that's really, really an important point, that we, like, one of our core values of our company is empowering our customers to learn more. We have a lot of education on our blog posts, and we really have an incredible customer service group that we want people to call in and ask and find out more and dig around, because we need to empower ourselves to take care of our health, and first by starting with the gut. And you're right, conventional doctors don't say that. They've started to now say, oh, if you're on an antibiotic, take a probiotic, which is good. It's a good first step. But it's not, we have to go further. And that's why people like you and I are doing what we're doing, and people like that are listening are taking their precious time to learn more about their natural health options.
No, I completely agree. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And I grew up, anytime I had a runny nose, it was like, oh, I need a Z-Pak. And I would just take antibiotics, not even thinking about it, because I'm trying to get through this illness. But I know just from listening to you that antibiotics are terrible for your gut.
Yep. Terrible. It's one of the big, and that's what's so bad, is that we live in this world. Like, we know that we are 10 times more bacteria than we are human. And yet the world we live in is so antibacterial. I mean, and it's killing our good bacteria. So, you were saying that about antibiotics, that, anytime you have the sniffles, you'd get a Z-Pak. And it's like, the CDC actually came out with a study that showed that 50%, up to 50% of prescriptions for antibiotics are not really necessary. And a lot of that is due to the doctors who overprescribe, but a lot of that is due to patients who really put pressure on their doctors to give them something. I'm going on a trip, I don't want to be sick, give me the antibiotic. And little do they know is that when the antibiotic, so your gut microbiome is, comprised of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And so we know that antibiotics go in there and they kill off the bad bacteria, which is why you're taking it, but it's also killing the good bacteria. Now, antibiotics save lives. We don't want to ever tell people not to take an antibiotic, especially if it's a life-threatening condition. And so that's fine. But, you just want to be careful when you're taking them, because if you're taking them for a viral infection, that all it's going to do is destroy your gut microbiome, which is where your immune system is. 80% of your immune system is found there. And now your own immune system is going to be hindered to fight off that virus. And so it's really a dangerous cycle that people get in with taking antibiotics. And then, antibiotics are found in our food supply too. And so, animal products are loaded with antibiotics. So we're eating antibiotics. So we're getting them, from all different sources, even if we're conscious enough to not take them from that's prescribed by a doctor. And I do think doctors are way more conscious of, prescribing antibiotics, which is a great turn in the right direction. But then, I was saying we live in this antimicrobial world. It's the same thing with glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. It's sprayed all over our crops. So all this food that we're eating is literally sprayed with glyphosate, which wreaks havoc on the gut microbiome. And remember how I was saying with antibiotics, it kills off the, good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria. Here's what's scary about glyphosate. Glyphosate only targets the beneficial bacteria. It doesn't even target the bad bacteria. It's only targeting the beneficial bacteria. So it's actually worse than antibiotics, and yet it's being sprayed all over our food supply. And then, even like antibacterial like sprays and cleaning products, there was a study that came out that showed that households that used like those cleaning products that say it kills 99% of bacteria actually had children with a higher incidence of autoimmune issues, allergies, those types of autoimmune issues, because they're killing off all the good bacteria. And so, I would never have used hand sanitizer, and I know now it's like, I still don't use it. In the beginning, I will admit, I was like, well, maybe I should be using something. Yeah. I didn't know, but, it's always, in my opinion, better to use like soap and water and just really try to there's a lot of good, most of the bacteria that's on us is good, it's good bacteria. So we just want to make sure we're not killing all of the microbes. So here we are living, and the other big offender of our gut health is stress. Before the pandemic started, we were living in such a stressful environment. Everyone's, the race to nowhere, we're all rushing to do all these things. And we just really want to make sure that we, try to create like mindful practices and things like that, because those are really, stress is very, very offensive to our gut health. And so, we live in this really antimicrobial, antibacterial world, and we just have to be aware of that and do things to really support our microbiome, to support our gut health on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the stress is, especially after this year. I mean, I feel like this year could have been the worst year for our gut. It's hand sanitizer, it's stress, it's no vitamin D. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, no going outside, drinking so much alcohol. I mean,
mm-hmm.
I kept saying, like, can somebody stand up on the podium and say, like, go outside for a walk, get some vitamin D. It's like we're being like, applauded for staying inside. And it's like, we need to be outside. We need to be getting the vitamin D. We need to be walking and running along the beach and running along, a path,
Mm-hmm.
or taking bike rides. And those are things that are so good for our microbiome, which is our microbiome is so key to our immune system. I mean, it's not just that 70 to 80% of our immune system is found in our gut lining. It's that our microbiome is the very mechanism that signals our immune cells. So this is really interesting that, people think of like, your immune cells, your immune system, people are like, I got to take vitamin C, which, is a good thing to take, and zinc and all those things. Those are very good things to be taking. But if your microbiome is not functional, if it's not a functioning microbiome, it doesn't send the signals to the immune cells. So the immune cells don't even activate themselves. And that is really profound. And a study recently came out explaining that the people who have been, had really severe reactions to it are having issues because their microbiome is not signaling to the immune system. And that's something that's really, really important. There was a study done on mice, and they had these no biotic mice, meaning they have no probiotic or no, microbiome in them. And so, but they had all of the dendritic cells, all of the immune cells that were, present in there. But when they injected them with the virus, the immune cells just sat there and didn't do anything because they weren't signaled. And so then they injected the mice with the microbiome with some, bacteria, and then then the immune cells got activated. So again, foundationally, when you're talking about, we've been talking about this for years. I mean, we've been, our microbiologist has been speaking on this in large stage audiences. I've been on podcasts talking about this, but it's never been more relevant than now that we have got, our immune system is so dictated by the health of our microbiome.
Yeah, it's so important to get that message out, because I thought that the gut was just your digestion for a long time, like you mentioned. And a lot of people in my life think that when I bring up the gut, they're like, okay, we get it. Like, you're bloated. No, like, I'm actually talking about my immunity. I'm talking about the gut brain connection. Like, so many, like, stress and like anxiety and depression actually could be coming from your gut.
Yes, exactly. And, there's something called the vagus nerve, which I'm sure you're familiar with. The vagus nerve is the largest nerve in the body. It goes from the brainstem all the way down to your intestines. And there's communication going on. They call it the communication superhighway. So there's this communication going on between the gut and the brain all the time. And that's why I always tell people, like, implement a mindful practice, change your lifestyle dramatically to reduce the stress. There's a reason. And I mean, if you don't believe me, like when people will say, I have butterflies in my stomach. Why? Because you're nervous about something. I mean, if that doesn't tell you that there's a communication between the brain, I don't know what else will. I mean, there are so many signals going back and forth to the gut and the brain. So your gut might be dysbiotic, and therefore it's causing you to have some maybe mood disorders or, anxiety, depression, those types of things. And then the reverse is true. Your anxiety and depression could be sending signals to your gut, and then you start having gut dysbiosis and gut issues. So it's really important to limit the amount of stress as much as possible. Remember, you could only control what you could control. And so, and the one thing we could always control is our attitude toward any situation that we're in. And so I just always encourage people to just take it down, take a step back, kind of zoom out of what's going on, and just look at the big picture and just try to, and just live a little bit calmer, because it really does have a huge impact on your health. And again, all the fighting going on in the world. I mean, I haven't watched the news in months.
Same.
I have no intention of going back to the news. It's been so, because it's just that fighting and that, the fear that everybody's giving about everything. It's really to increase ratings. It's not to deliver any meaningful information. And so fortunately, we have platforms like podcasts like yours and other types of platforms that we could decide whether we trust or not. So it's really important to not surround yourself with all of that like hate and negativity. It's just not good for us.
No, exactly. And if it's something important you need to know, like you can find out about it in other ways. Like I read the Wall Street Journal sometimes in the morning, like I'll check, Twitter or whatever. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I had the news on all the time because I thought I needed to know something. But I mean, that was almost a year ago. Like I can't imagine if I still had the news on, I'd be losing my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say it's just sports and weather. That's all I want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So I think it's really important to hear a CEO, a former lawyer, talking about mindfulness practices. Like, what are the practices you incorporate in your life?
Yeah. Well, for one, my biggest thing that I incorporated was I hired more people, because when we first started this, I was literally, my husband and I were doing it so much on our own. It was unbelievable what kind of like growth we experienced with just the two of us. And then we brought in our first employee, and then our second, and then our third, and then we eventually hired, like a second in command, like somebody to kind of take over what a lot of the day-to-day stuff. So I think that's why I like to talk about lifestyle. I mean, you really do need to eliminate a lot of the stress that's in your life. And, if it means changing the way, you live, and, then that's change the way that you live. But I just think it's really important to try to make changes to not have so much stress in your life. And then as far as like technique, I work out outside almost every day. I mean, I walk, I'm a power walker, and I kind of I jog and I walk. That's like my drug of choice. I love to get out there. I love to be outside, even though I live in the Chicago area. It's freezing cold. I dress appropriately and I go out there even in the winter. But I think, whatever, if there's an exercise routine that really speaks to you, I mean, walking and fast walking and jogging are things that speak to me, but that might not speak to everybody. It's important that you find something that you enjoy and you love to do. I know I should be doing yoga, but for whatever reason, yoga and I don't see eye to eye. So, but I mean, my husband does. Everybody, a lot of people really have incredible results with yoga. And then I do deep breathing. I do deep breathing every single morning and most nights before bed. So just I have a little breathing app that I do, and just guided breathing, because that seems to work for me.
Which app is that?
It's called the HeartMath.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I've had one that's called Calm. I think it's called Calm something. Mm-hmm. So, but the HeartMath is what I do every day. Absolutely every day. And you do
amazing.
Here, and they measure like your heart rate and stuff like that. And it just heart rate, HeartMath, and the device is called Inner Balance.
Very cool. Is that it? Do you do like a meditation too, or is that your meditation?
Yeah, that's kind of my meditation. I've done some meditations, and I don't know, and I think a lot of people have a lot of success in meditation, but I have more success with the deep breathing for some reason. So
do what works for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm curious what your diet is like, because you're, so much about taking care of your gut.
Yeah. So I'm I do intermittent fast. I'm a huge proponent of it because it seems to be really good for the gut. So I like to do all things that are benefiting the gut. And so I intermittent fast, and I really believed I was one of those people that could never intermittent fast. I was like, there's no way I could work out without eating. There's no way I could do this. And I just started to slowly incorporate it. And it's just so easy now. I usually stop eating around 6:30 at night. And then I wake up, I don't eat again until probably 11 or 12, like today was 12. And then as far as what I eat, I eat a lot of eggs. I love eggs. So for lunch, I eat eggs and like Ezekiel bread. And that's a kind of a go-to. And then salads, I eat salads a lot for lunch and that kind of thing. And then for dinner, I usually make like organic chicken, grass-fed beef, like whether it's steak or like fajitas that have grass-fed beef or organic chicken or pasture-raised chicken. And then with, I always have a big salad and a vegetable. So I'm not super restrictive. I do eat carbs. I'm the other big thing with gut health is creating diversity in your gut. Creating diversity is really, really important. And so eating a diverse group of foods is really important. Unfortunately, people have so many allergies, which is a sign that you have gut dysbiosis. And so now you're restricting yourself from all these foods, which you have to do because you're having these intolerances. And then now you're eating so many less variety, such a lower variety of foods. And it's such a double-edged sword. So if your allergies are not really, really bad, and if you could slowly start introducing them as you're taking care of your gut, whether it's taking a spore-based probiotic, whether it's doing other types of things, it just is really important to start introducing more foods as you can, because diversity. So I'm not super restrictive in my eating. And I do, I do like, cheat days, not cheat days, but, like not as healthy days on the,
Yeah.
things like that. So.
And I'm guessing you're taking your probiotic as well.
Oh yes. I've got lots of supplements. So yes, I take a lot of supplements. I just believe that we are, the world we live in is very deficient in a lot of nutrients that we need. And we're not as clean as I eat and the organic that I eat and, healthy foods. It's like, I'm not always getting all of the nutrients that I need. So I take our probiotic absolutely every day. My kids take it, my parents take it, my in-laws take it, our priest takes it. I mean, all the neighbors take it, everyone that I love, I hate being, pushy, but I'm like, you need to take this. You don't understand. This is so important for you. So yes, I do.
And which other supplements do you take?
Well, I take a prebiotic and then the probiotic and then the prebiotic, which is the food for the probiotic. I take our IgG product, our Immunity Plus product. Then I take vitamin D, which I think is super important, even though I do measure my vitamin D pretty regularly. I think that it's a really important supplement to be taking. Chances are you're not going to, but anyway, I think it's important to take it. Magnesium. What else do I take? A sulforaphane one. Let's see. Fisentin, which is kind of like a nootropic that I learned about.
Oh, okay.
And our Gut Fortify, which is a mucosal support product, which is really, really key. So, that's pretty much, I take a lot of our own products, of course, because I believe in them. We only bring products that are missing and needed from the market. Oh, I also take vitamin C. That's super important. Two of our products actually have zinc in it, so I don't take excess zinc, but I do think, of course, now especially it's important to be taking zinc too. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I actually didn't realize that you had so many products on the market. So the OG was the probiotic, and that is, I think it's a spore-based probiotic. And would you mind just talking through like how that's different than other probiotics?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. That's like my favorite question.
Great.
So our probiotic is exactly what you said. It's a spore-based probiotic. So when I say spore-based, I'm not talking about a mushroom spore. It means it has this endospore shell around itself. And it's a very hardy shell around it. And the significance of that hardy shell is that it allows the strains to get to the intestines alive. So they get to the they have this shell on them. And so they go through the intestinal tract or, the digestive system. And then when they get to the intestines, they take this shell off and that's when they become alive. See, the problem with most, like the overwhelming majority of probiotics on the market is that they're live in the bottle. So, or presumably they're live in the bottle. That's why many need to be refrigerated. And we always say if a probiotic needs to be refrigerated in order to stay alive, how in the world, it can't even withstand the room temperature of a store shelf. So how in the world would it survive your body temperature, which is 98.6? And the answer is it doesn't. And then even worse, how would it survive your gastric system, your stomach, very acidic environment? And they just don't. In fact, that was one of the first studies that we did. That was the first study that we did was a gastric survivability study. And we took the leading selling probiotic sold at a major health food store, had a 50 billion cell count in the product, died off 99.99% by the time it got to the intestines. Crazy. And so, whereas they studied the strains and Just Thrive, the spore-based strains, And they found that 100% of them arrived alive in the intestines. So, and it's because of this endospore shell. And the thing to remember is that we did not put this shell on them. This is not something we've engineered. This is how these strains, these bacillus spore-based strains, were found in nature. So years ago, when our ancestors would eat off of the land, they ate roots and tubers, they would eat something like, let's say, some type of root or tuber, and then they would get the spores, they would get the soil, and then they would be swallowing some of those bacillus spores. And that's how they get them. They were nature's true probiotic. And they're really the way nature intended us to be taking care of our guts. And so, it's not like anything that we've engineered. It's just we were able to source these strains. You can't find these in the environment now. They're, virtually missing unless you go to some very clean, like there's a tribe in Tanzania where you could probably find them in. But they're very, very hardy. And so the biggest difference is their ability to survive the gastric system and get to the intestines alive. So the best way to describe it is like if you envision a garden and you kind of compare that garden to your gut. And so in that garden, there's, plants that have been stepped on and trampled on, and then there's weeds growing all over that garden. So with the conventional strains that you find in the majority of probiotics, the lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains, if you throw those into that garden, that they will probably never even get there. But let's just say, for argument's sakes, that they did get there. They may plant a plant in that garden, and then they leave. So they're not doing anything with like the plants that have been stepped on and trampled on. They're not doing anything with the weeds. Where the spores, you throw them in the garden, they get there 100% alive. And then they have the ability to attach to the soil. They have the ability to get rid of the weeds in the garden. And then they have the ability to help bring those plants that have been stepped on and trampled on back to life. So when you bring it back to the intestines, these strains get to the intestines alive. They have the ability to attach to the intestinal cell wall, so they colonize. And then they have the ability to help get rid of pathogenic bacteria that's in the gut. And then they also have the ability to bring the beneficial bacteria that may not be thriving, help bring it back to life. So it's a very, very different approach to probiotics and much more effective. And then those strains actually stay there for about 21 to 28 days. So we kind of call them like the gardener of the gut. So they're the gardener of the gut, where they go in and they're really making a true microbial change in your gut.
Wow, that's so incredible and so important for people to know, because I mean, if you're going to be spending money on a probiotic anyways, wouldn't you want it to be one that arrives 100% there?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've had that where people are like, oh, well, this product is a lot less expensive, and I'm like, well, isn't it a lot more expensive to take something that's $19.99 and that's just basically dead upon arrival, and that's the problem. And I always tell people, like, if our product is too expensive, like, then take one every other day. I mean, at least you're getting these super important strains. Take one every third day, I mean, give it to kids. It's so important to give to kids. Kids are being raised in such a different environment than I know I was when I was a kid, which was a long, long time ago. I remember one person that had a peanut allergy all through K through 12th grade. I knew one boy that had a peanut allergy, and now it's like, people have so many different kinds of allergies. You go to a restaurant, they ask you what your allergies are. And I just think that kids are being brought up in this very antimicrobial world, and we need to be supporting their gut health. And so even if people want to do, one capsule every other day, or, something to make it more affordable, that's so much better than taking a lesser expensive probiotic supplement that really is going to be dead on arrival. And I do want to make it clear that even dead bacteria will give people some symptomatic relief. People will say, but I've taken a probiotic and I did notice a difference. And you might notice a difference, and that's great. But this is actually making a true change in the gut microbiome. It's also really the biggest point is that we have a study showing that these bacillus strains, are actually helping with leaky gut. So they're actually helping seal up the tight junctions and reducing that LPS toxin level from going in the bloodstream, which is so critically important for overall health.
Totally. And what is leaky gut for those who don't know?
Yeah, so leaky gut is exactly what it sounds like, which is great. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's basically your gut, the intestinal cell wall of your gut is leaking. It's opening up, and toxins that are found in your gut that aren't really problematic, toxins like LPS, which stands for lipopolysaccharides, these toxins normally are in your gut and they are not really problematic. It's when they seep into your bloodstream and your circulatory system, it's where your body starts, getting this inflammatory response. It's an invader in your bloodstream. And so there was a study, or not a study, but there was an estimated by some experts saying that 80% of people have a leaky gut and don't even know it, because we're living in this very offensive, world that we're living in. The study that we did on leaky gut was actually done with college age students. And the way the researchers started out the study is they took 100 college students and tested to see if they had a leaky gut. And the way they tested is they gave them a challenge meal, meaning like kind of an unhealthy meal. And they took a few bites of it, and then they tested the toxins that seeped into their bloodstream. They found out that 55% of those otherwise healthy college students, they had no other, health issues at all, weren't on any medication. 55% of them actually had a leaky gut and didn't know it. And the study that was done, actually, after 30 days, they sent them home. They sent the college students home after 30 days. They said, no dietary or lifestyle modifications at all. Just do your normal thing. And we know what college students are doing, which is not always good. And then after 30 days, they came back to the lab. They gave them another challenge meal, and they found that the placebo group that didn't have the spores actually saw a 32% increase in LPS toxins in the bloodstream. So it's like that leaky faucet, it's just this constant drip, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. So if you're not addressing the leaky gut, the leakiness of the gut is getting that much worse. So now, then the study, they took the treated group that took the spores, and they found a 42% reduction in LPS toxins in just 1 month. So really, really profound results.
Absolutely. Are there symptoms of leaky gut that I would be able to pick up on?
I think that most people, anybody who has like an autoimmune issue or allergy, food allergy of any type, almost for sure has a leaky gut, but there's not really, any type of, I think if you have any type of health issue, it kind of is a signal that you have some type of leakiness going in the gut. And so there are blood tests, but they're not available at, the major, place, you're not going to find, they're not conventional. They're really done more in a research setting to find the LPS toxin level in the bloodstream. But it's safe to assume that in the world we live in, that a lot of people have leaky gut.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Wow.
And I always say to people, it's funny because you may start taking the probiotic because you have some gastrointestinal issues, or maybe you're taking it because maybe you think you have leaky gut, or, whatever reason you're taking it. And maybe, you're like, oh, this really isn't helping right away. But the bottom line is we know it's helping your it's supporting your immune system. It's supporting, I always say the side effects of the product are increases mood, or better mental health, or, increases your mood and happiness. 90% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. There's so many good side effects that come from this that, you may have been brought to it. I've had this story over and over again where customers they have come to this product because of some issue, but then they start to notice I have more energy. Well, yeah, when you're more regular, you have more energy because you're getting rid of all those toxins. And so there's so many, secondary benefits of it, which are really, really exciting for people.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And then, so you have a prebiotic as well. I know the difference, but maybe our listeners don't.
The prebiotic is kind of back to that garden analogy. It's like the fertilizer for the gut. So really important. We're a probiotic, we're a gut health supplement company, and we did not launch a prebiotic for a long time because it's very important for us to bring things that are researched, that are needed and missing in the market. And so we found that a lot of prebiotics weren't able to identify the difference between the weeds in the garden and the good plants in the garden. So the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And a lot of times people would start taking a prebiotic and it made a problem worse for them because the prebiotic is feeding the bad bacteria. So it was important for us to find ingredients that only focused on the beneficial bacteria. So the prebiotic fibers that are found in our product are only made up of fibers that actually target the beneficial bacteria and not the pathogenic bacteria.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. Yeah.
Really, really important. And we know that the prebiotic is actually that we know the probiotic is helping increase diversity, which is really important for our gut. But we know the prebiotic, increases that tenfold. So it's really, really a great combination of products to take. But again, I always say start with a prebiotic and you'll see what we're talking about.
Absolutely.
The other thing with prebiotic is that you could get prebiotics from food. If you're eating a ton of like prebiotic foods, Jerusalem artichokes, bananas, all these things, there's a lot of foods, but like the probiotic strains, you're really not getting from a food source. So I definitely say to take, start with the probiotic.
That's really important to hear because my fiance always tells me, "Oh, I don't need a probiotic because I eat yogurt." I said, "Well, you're not getting everything you need from yogurt."
Yeah. Well, in fact, the funny thing about yogurt is that, yogurt is one of the things that were studied by the lab too, and showed that 99% of the strains in the yogurt die off also. But the scary part about yogurt is so many people are eating yogurt, and I'm sure your husband's not one of them, but they're eating it and not realizing the sugar content that's in it.
He only gets no sugar added. I've made that change.
Okay, good. I figured that you wouldn't allow that, but it's like, people aren't looking at like sugar is also very detrimental to the gut. And so they're doing something to try to get probiotics, but the sugar is kind of, negating those efforts. So it's really important to just, yogurts are tricky because they definitely have a lot of sugar in them.
Totally. I started eating non-dairy yogurt maybe a year or two ago, and there is so much sugar in non-dairy yogurt. And so I always tell people, like, make sure you read the label. Don't just like see non-dairy and grab it. Like 20 grams, like it's crazy how much sugar is in there.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's like, oh my God, and that's the problem with our food supply. I mean, I think that's the biggest reason our country has been hit so hard with this pandemic, I feel like, because our food supply is just a total mess and it's wreaking havoc on our gut. And like you said, it has been really rewarding to know that we are really changing the lives of people, because that's why we did this and why we got into this, and to know that we are really helping people support their immune system, their gut health, and it's really important. And just because of this world that we live in. And again, like I said, we have been talking about this for years, it's not just because of the pandemic. So really, really important.
I agree. I mean, we're not going to be able to stop like the advertisers and, the big food companies. Right. So might as well do what you're doing.
Right. Exactly.
And then you said that you had an IgG as well. I don't know what that is actually.
Yeah. IgG stands for immunoglobulin G. And immunoglobulins are antibodies. IgG is the most common antibody that's found in our gut and our body. And its job is to bind and neutralize toxins that are found in our gut, and then your body will safely remove them from the body. So now we have this IgG product is now giving our bodies 25% more of IgG to help support the already existing IgG that's in our body. So it helps reduce the viral load. It's also been proven to really help also with the tightening of the intestinal cell wall. So it supports leaky gut and that kind of thing. So IgG is super important for immune health. I know that was something I made sure everybody in my family was also taking recently. I mean, I just am a huge fan of the IgG. We learned about it. We were invited to a gathering of some of the top HIV researchers in the world a couple of years back in Seattle, our microbiologist and myself. And they invited us because of our studies on leaky gut. And then we were introduced to this IgG manufacturer who told us about the crazy studies they've done with HIV and particularly with the intestinal cell wall. So IgG is another incredibly important supportive product for your gut health. And the thing we have to remember is, like, we are just on the tip of the iceberg of what things we could do to further support our gut health. So it's really exciting. It's just super exciting to see, I'm sure there'll be a lot more products coming out based on all the new research that's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's huge. And then you say there was a fourth product, Immuno Plus?
Well, we have Immunity Plus, and that is, and then we have Gut Fortify, which is that's a mucosal support product. So really important to help rebuild that mucosal barrier, which the intestinal cell wall is one cell layer thick. it's the mucosal barrier that is it really needs to be protected because it's protecting our intestinal cell wall. So the mucosal product that we have, Gut Fortify, actually has 4 amino acids in there that are actually helping rebuild that mucosal wall. So, and some polyphenols. And so again, very thought out. It is super important to us that we do not bring anything that is already in the market. Like we're bringing things that are truly, truly missing and needed. And I know I've said that a couple times, but I just want, like, trust is another one of our core values. And we just want people to always trust that we aren't going to be a company that has 200 different supplements. Like, that's not what our plan is. Our plan is to bring things that are really moving the needle in people's health. And because we're like that, it has allowed us to grow, because people do trust us and they trust what they're receiving from us, and that we have the research behind it.
Absolutely. Was this element of trust something that you felt was missing when you worked in pharma?
You know what? The thing is, I believed so wholeheartedly in supplements, and I think that people have such a negative, not all people, but a lot of people have a negative, like, it's snake oil, like, oh, and there are companies out there that are kind of like snake oil products. And we wanted to, like, elevate the standard of supplements, because we know how beneficial supplements are. We know how they really start to make a huge difference in people's lives. And so, and yeah, I mean, the trust in the pharma, I know I don't have a lot of trust in a lot of what the pharmaceutical industry is doing. I do think they do some very good things. And I think that there's a lot that they aren't doing that's, admirable and really focusing on health and wellness. So I just think that it's more, I just know we wanted to elevate the standard in the supplement space. And we just challenge other brands too, like, do some research, or, and take the time, take some of your resources and invest in research. I mean, it's expensive to do it. And it's difficult for brands to do that, because you can't, even if you have a study that shows a finding as a supplement, you can't make the claim. You're not really allowed to make the claim on it because of different laws that are out there. But I just know that it gives us peace of mind too, to know that we have these studies out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you were pushing a product that is only not making 5% of its, strains to reach the gut, like, and you're pushing this as the best probiotic on the market, like, how is there trust in that claim?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's amazing. And you work with your husband, that's incredible to me. I mean, how has that been for you?
Good. It's been really good. I don't know. We just have gotten along. We were, like, I don't know, when we met when we were really pretty young. I mean, 20 some years old, 21 years old is when I was 21, he was 22. And we just have always had a really awesome relationship. And we'll be married 28 years in May. And, we're still super madly in love with each other. And it's kind of, my kids are always like, oh my God, you guys are, like, so gross. They don't say we're gross. They just say, like, oh my gosh, you guys are so cute, blah, blah. But I mean, I don't know, we've really been able to navigate the working together really nicely. So I feel very blessed. I'm very grateful every day for what we have, both personally and professionally. So, and we did even say, like, recently, it was like, it got to a point where, like, we were so consumed with the business that we're super consumed with our kids' lives. They were all college athletes, and we went to all their high school games, we're super involved in our kids' lives. And I feel really blessed to have had that in our lives. But we also got so consumed in the business, and we were like, we have to start, it's not always about the business. But as far as, like, I don't know, we know our roles and we stay in them, and we collaborate really nicely together. And it's pretty rare that we have a massive, like, disagreement in the business. So I'm very, very blessed. So, I mean, if you could do it, there's no better way to spend more time with each other. I mean, we missed each other, but I mean, it has to be the right, mix of people. It's not for everybody, but I would not want it any other way, for sure.
Well, congrats on 28 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And do you have any other, like, products, like, coming out, or?
We have a pet probiotic too. So
wow.
We have our Immunity Health, or Immunity Plus, which is our immune product, which is just great to take during this time of year, cold season and all that. very thought out formulation on them. We have a pet probiotic. We have a gluten away product, which is for the accidental exposure of gluten. It's not meant to be taken so you could go and take, eat a bunch of gluten. It's not a replacement. It's not that. It's more for those people who have really severe gluten intolerances and are trying to eat gluten-free. But then there was a study that came out that showed that they tested like 500 gluten-free foods that are labeled gluten-free, and they found out that up to 50% of them were actually had trace amounts of gluten in it, and that's devastating to somebody with celiac, somebody with some severe gluten intolerance. So it's really meant for that reason. But another study showed that like everybody actually has it's disruptive to our gut lining. Gluten is just disruptive to our gut lining, so it's really meant for that accidental exposure. So we have a gluten away product, our immunity product, a pet probiotic. We recently launched a UTI product that is really exciting. It's a fast acting UTI product. So it's been a lot. So right now we don't have anything in the works. We launched about 3 or 4 new products last year. So we're taking a little bit of a deep breath and trying to get those to the market and tell people about them. So again, and then people know us, they know that we're only bringing things that are really researched and things that we know work.
I think the research component is loud and clear. I told you that's why I started taking Just Thrive in the first place. I heard about all your research and it's so impressive. Well, we only have a few more minutes left, but I wanted to touch back on, you mentioned your passion for deep thinking. And we live in a world where that's almost impossible because every free minute we have, then we're on our phone or then we're turning the TV on. So what recommendations or what books do you recommend for my listeners if they want to get more into deep thinking?
Yeah. Well, anything by Wayne Dyer is amazing. When he passed away, I felt like a member of my family because I connected to him so deeply, but he has so many great books. And one of the ones that for whatever reason I loved was You Can See Clearly, or I Can See Clearly Now. It's kind of like almost a memoir of his life. So, if you're going to read them, and I thought that one just was awesome. Just talked about how his life is and just being grateful. And then the other one, The Four Agreements is just such an important book. I know most people know about it, but I'm actually rereading it right now because I asked my niece I just gave it to her. She was over last week and I'm like, here, take this book. She's like 20 years old and I'm like, go take this and read it. And so I'm like, I'll read it. I'll reread it again. I've read it so many times, but it's just so important to remember to live your life that way and to just to love each other and remember, during all of this division going on in our country, I just kept saying I'm just going to give people love. I'm going to smile. I don't care what side of the political party you're on, or we just need to love each other more. And most of us agree on the majority of things anyway. And I don't know, I just try to do those types of things and just be a better person. I've been reaching out to people and just that kind of stuff just moves me. So
beautiful.
I love anything by Wayne Dyer for sure.
Okay. I haven't read any Wayne Dyer, so thank you. I will look into that.
Yeah, definitely look into that. And I also think for people who have any forgiveness issues, I've seen it with so many people. I think forgiveness is a really important thing to do in life. I think we need to just forgive each other. And it only, the famous saying that it's like drinking the poison that you want to give your enemy when you don't forget. It's like you drinking the poison because it hurts you more than someone else. So as wronged as you were, it doesn't mean you have to have lunch with that person all the time or have them an active part of your life, but somewhere deep inside you have to forgive them for whatever it is that they may be going through. And I don't know those, and I just love to read all those kinds of books, and it just has helped me lead a better, more fulfilling and meaningful life. And I feel like it's been great to be able to pass that on to my kids because I see them being so thoughtful and being so just conscious of those types of things. And I feel super blessed about it.
That's beautiful. And yeah, how lucky for them to be exposed to that so early. That's amazing.
I was exposed by my dad. My dad used to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's so crazy. I was blessed to be born into a family like that too. So it's good.
That's amazing. Okay. Well, I know you have to run. So just one last question. What is your gift?
What is my gift? Definitely relationships and connecting with people. That is definitely my gift. I love people. I love People used to always say you'd be so good in sales. And I always think somebody that's good in sales is good in sales because they just connect with people. And I really do, like, when I ask people about like where they're from, or I just genuinely care. I love being around people, and I love talking to people, and I love building relationships. And I've been blessed with a lot of really good ones in my life.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I've loved speaking with you. I'm so excited you came on, and I've learned so much from you. Again, every time I hear you speak, I learn. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this, and the platform that you have, and you're changing people's lives every day, and just keep up the great work. And anything I could do to help, just let me know.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It was such an honor to have Tina on today's episode. She is such a powerhouse, such an inspiration to me. If you want to order her probiotic or any of her other products that she discusses on the episode, head to www.justthrivehealth.com and make sure you use the code LitUpWithLo for 15% off your order. Check the show notes for all of this information, as well as all the other resources discussed in this episode. Thank you so much again, and I will see you next Friday.